Council work session for Monday, December the 16th. We have several items on our agenda tonight, the first of which is our joint meeting with the Chamber of Commerce Board. And I think tonight, because we've got a couple of new members on the Chamber, we'd like to go around the room and introduce ourselves. And I'll start off. I'm Mayor Turnbow, the City of Raymore.
Jay Holman, Councilmember Ward 3.
Kevin Barber, Councilmember Ward 3.
David Gress, City of Raymore staff.
I'm Rocky Urshel, and I am the Chamber Treasurer. I work at Nose Jewelry for 15 years now.
Tabitha Forrester of Dave's Bike Shop on the Chamber Board.
Mike Metzger on the Chamber Board and will be the Vice President of the Chamber 2020.
Jeremy Manser, I'm with Community Bank of Raymore, board member at large.
I'm Sean Petrie. I'm on the board of the Chamber, and I'm the pastor at Real Life Church.
John Berenson, City Council, Ward 4.
Tom Circo, City Council member, Ward 2.
Joe Burke, City Council, Ward 2.
Reginald Townsend, City Councilman, Ward 1.
Dale Jacobson, City Council, Ward 1.
I'm Sonia Abdelgawad, City Council, Ward 4.
Jonathan Sir, City Attorney.
Mike Eakey, the Assistant City Manager.
Jim Fairborn, City Manager.
Thank you all. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Fairborn right now, and we'll go ahead and get started. I think, actually, I'll go ahead and turn it over to David if you want me to.
That's all I was going to do.
David's has a prepared presentation about economic development, which is the mainstream of the Chamber of Commerce. So we're going to go ahead and start with David tonight. So David Gress, please.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of the council, and Chamber Board, I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening to speak with you all. I wanted to take the time to provide you all with a kind of a year-end update as we head into the last couple of weeks of 2019, as well as an outlook on the first couple months of 2020 for some of the projects that I hope to be working on here come the new year. So follow along as I go through, kind of provide you all with an update of some of the projects that are currently underway. First and foremost, I'm sure you've seen all the activity going on if you've driven past the site. Just south of the intersection of 58 Highway and Fox Ridge Drive, the Lofts at Fox Ridge apartment community is currently under construction. The contractor of that site has been very hard at work doing some site work and grading, getting that site and property ready for the installation and construction of the utilities that will serve that site into the future. Looking at the timeline of this project, staff is patiently waiting the submission of the building plans and construction plans that will work to make these buildings go vertical. It's our hope that our building official can get a jump start on those over the winter so that when springtime comes around and then the property owner is ready to start construction, that they'll have everything they need in order to get started. Overall, this will be 400 units that will fill in kind of one of the voids that we see along the 58 Highway corridor, and will actually support, hopefully, a lot of the projects that I'll touch on here during this presentation as far as attracting new residents and new folks to our community. I'm going to go ahead for the sake of location. I'm going to skip forward to the next project and then back to the one you just saw. But if you move just to the north of the Lofts at Fox Ridge, at the intersection of 58 and Fox Ridge, the Hy-Vee, the folks at Hy-Vee are working very hard to bring their fast and fresh concept, which is remarkably the first of its kind in the Kansas City metro area. It's a 6,500 square foot convenience store or meal solution store, as they've called it, kind of the next generation of your convenience store. One of those spots where you can get all of the staple items that you would typically see inside of a grocery store, your milk, your eggs, or everything that folks were probably trying to pick up yesterday before the snow hit, without having to battle the long lines of everything else that is in a grocery store. So we're very excited. You can see some kind of preliminary sketches of what that'll look like. And actually tomorrow evening, the applicant for this project will go to our Planning and Zoning Commission for their site plan approval, which is the last step, hopefully for them, as they look forward for some site work to be done in 2020. Going back a little bit as you orient yourself down to the interchange project, I'm sure you're all very familiar with, the Raymore Industrial Park, which is being led by regional developer Van Trust Real Estate. I'm very excited to have them interested in our community and making the investment to bring this type of development, this type of economic activity to our community. So that, again, that project will wrap up hopefully at the end of this month through our the second reading through City Council. As I'm sure you all are aware, we've been working very hard to keep that project on track. It is our hope that the first couple weeks of 2020 that allow, The applicant for this project will start doing some of the extensive site work as far as the road infrastructure, the sewer, the water, and everything that will serve that will set them up very nicely to start marketing the site and hopefully attracting some good quality tenants and jobs to our community. So very excited to see that project moving forward and hopefully wrapping up here at the end of this month. Last but certainly not least, just to the north of City Hall would be the Compass Health. The folks are working again very diligently to wrap up this project. Again, going to our Planning and Zoning Commission tomorrow evening to hopefully gain their final approval for their site plan for this site. They're looking at relocating their existing facility that they have here in Raymore and building this two-story, roughly 40,000 square foot building. When it's completely said and finished, it will house anywhere a number of staff offices, training offices, as well as primary, dental, as well as medical facilities for the community. So it's good to have them wanting to stay in our community and adding their facility here, which again will hopefully draw a number of residents and patients to this area and drive the support for some future development that we hope to see in our community. Now moving on to some of the projects that I hope to work on in 2020. Again, just kind of dovetailing off of some of the activity that we're wrapping up here in 2019. If you're familiar at all, I'm sure you are with the Raymore Gateway site. It's one of the prominent sites as you come into Raymore on 58 Highway, located at the corner of 58 and Kentucky Road. As staff moves forward, we are moving forward in 2020 with the construction of what we are now calling Westgate Drive, so not to be confused with existing Kentucky, Old Kentucky, relocated Kentucky, or any other iteration of Kentucky Road. So we're very excited to be moving forward with that project, which will hopefully, once that infrastructure is in place, we'll see a lot of more interest and activity on this site. And working with the current property owner and developer that's developed a portion of it already, they do have some substantial interest for some pretty substantial users that could occupy specifically the 23 acres to the back that you see at the very top of the map, as well as some of the pad sites that exist just to the east of the Belfonte's Car Wash and the Firestone. So a lot of opportunities for real estate and development on that site. And again, we're hopeful that once the road is in, folks will have a much better understanding of what that site could look like into the future. Moving back to the east along 58 Highway near the Hy-Vee that we had talked about, this area has actually garnered a lot of interest, particularly once the lofts at Fox Ridge and the Hy-Vee development are vertical and hopefully occupied in 2020. It's our anticipation that that's going to drive a lot more demand and support for services around that area to support the residents and the patrons of those buildings that will be under construction next year. And actually, it's already starting to kind of play itself out. We've had a lot of discussions with some local developers that have interest in the land areas around this site, including, but not limited to, obviously, the two lots that exist on the southwest corner of the Willow Inn Shopping Center, a little over 2 acres there, ripe for development, as well as a potential reuse and redevelopment of the existing Orsolin building on the other side of Fox Ridge Drive. A building that has been vacant for some time and presents some challenges, but could be a good opportunity to bring some additional activity to the city. In addition to that, the land area that surrounds the proposed Hy-Vee that you see highlighted in orange on the south, once you take out the land area that Hy-Vee is occupying, there's about 36 acres left over for some sort of commercial mixed use or office development. And again, it's our hope that once some of these areas fill in around the Hy-Vee site and the lofts at Fox Ridge, that we'll see a lot more demand for additional services that could fill that void, that green space within the middle of our community. Moving a little bit to the east as well, just south of the Pathways project we talked about, the Kirby site is what staff has kind of dubbed this property. In total, there's about 14.5 acres around this corner of 58 and Sunset Lane. Most recently, I've been working with a local property owner and local business owner who has acquired a little over 4.5 acres that you see kind of outlined with that conceptual sketch. And they're looking at some point in the future when the timing is right to relocate their existing business somewhere on this site, as well as provide some additional opportunities for some additional services, whether that's restaurants, additional pad sites, retail, whatever the case is. It's our hope that once Compass Health is operating and attracting their tenants and patrons to their site, that will again drive the demand for additional retail services and restaurants and of the like around this area. So very excited to be working on that. One thing I'll point out, and I've kind of touched on in the past that you've probably seen before, the conceptual sketch that you see here is something that I worked really closely with the previous director, Matt Tappan, and putting together, and it's proven to be very successful in approaching either property owners or potential tenants and just showing that that we've put forth the effort in thinking about what the site could look like and how we would like it to align with what our vision for the city is, and it's proven time and time again that that adds value to communicating our vision for what that area could look like to a potential end user or developer. And so that's one thing I hope to keep working on with staff here in the future as I move forward with some of the ED efforts for the city. And last but certainly not least would be the Good Ranch, which you all are very familiar with, the several hundred acres that exist around I-49 North Cass Parkway. I touched a little bit on the North Cass Industrial Park and some of the activity that's going on there with the Van Trust Group. Again, it's our hope with the multiple development areas, Tract 1 or the Pork Chop, I'm sure you've heard it referenced time and time again, North Cass Plaza, some of the residential areas around that site. Overall, this is the city's premier site for some sort of mixed-use commercial entertainment development, and we're hoping that once everything gets going down with Van Trust project, that will again spur a lot of interest for some additional development surrounding that to provide support for all the activity that will be going on at that site. Currently, staff's been working very hard with the current property owner to secure a master developer for particularly Tract 1, which is that mixed-use kind of entertainment site that you've seen several times before, a site that has drawn a lot of attention, and so we're trying to keep that moving forward as we go into 2020. And again, just a layout of some of the activity that's going on there with Van Trust to the south of North Cass Parkway, and then again, one of our conceptual plans, iteration of that to the north, along the north side of North Cass. Now, taking a step back from some of the sites and the ED work itself, I wanted to touch on some of the background work that I've been doing with our communications department to prepare some of these materials that I like to hand out to folks when I'm out talking to them in the community. So one of the first things that I did when I started in this position was took a hard look at our ED website to make sure it's as easy to use and intuitive as possible for folks that are coming to our website to look for information, trying to understand the kind of chronological order that they go through when they're trying to get information on what the city of Raymore is, what our vision is, and what opportunities we might have. So worked really close, and I appreciate the work of our communications staff that they've done to get that up and running as quickly as they possibly can. In addition to that, I updated some of the marketing materials and brochures, some of the summary overview sheets that we have for some of our key sites. This is just an example of something that was put together that I've kind of refreshed with some more up-to-date information, as well as my information specifically so that folks know who to reach out to and contact when they might have questions about coming to Raymore. Two of the other kind of separate from the kind of city's information, two of the other programs that I've worked closely with is the Location One information system. It's a real estate listing service that's hosted by Evergy, our energy provider here for the Kansas City area. And it's used very heavily by regional and global primary employers when they're looking at different sites that are within the region to either locate or expand or bring their business to the area. And so it's been time and time again reiterated the importance of making sure that all of that information is up to date and accurate as possible. So I've been working really hard to update some of that and get it up and running. I attended a training here just last month down in Springfield with Missouri Partnership, who is the business attraction arm of the state, if you will, and they kind of facilitate the site selection process. And they had a really good training on how to put together information and send it off kind of as a cohesive package, branded specifically for your community or whatever specific project you're working on, and how to best send that off to the individual that's looking for information on that site. And so I look forward when the timing comes and I get those requests to work with our communications staff to brand that specific to Raymore and get our message across to those individuals about what Raymore's about. So this is just a quick screenshot of what that service looks like. The property I have highlighted there is Municipal Circle, some of the properties we have around here, and then if you scroll specifically, and kind of hard to see, this is the Good Ranch that I touched on just previously. It provides a lot of high-level information, population, nearest airport, everything that those site selectors are looking for when they're trying to find the best site that would fit their needs. And so this is just an example of the most up-to-date one that I've worked on here most recently. And last but not least, the business retention and expansion efforts. This, in my opinion, is really I can say my boots on the ground within the community and getting out and working with some of the businesses that are already in our community, understanding what their needs are, what they see as strengths and weaknesses for the city. And so as part of my kind of introduction into this position, I worked with the city clerk's office when they send out their annual renewal notices to businesses each year. I made sure to include a little introduction letter in there so that the businesses would know who to reach out to if they had any questions. And then as part of that, I'm trying to put together some sort of outreach strategy to prioritize and figure out where I should start within the community to start getting a feel for what our businesses want, need, and what some of their questions might be. And so I look forward to interacting with the chamber as a part of that effort and getting my name and my face out there with the community. In addition to that, and one of the things that has become increasingly important for some of the business attraction projects similar to the Van Trust, in addition to some of the incentives that the city can offer from our standpoint, our utility providers, Evergy, as well as the state have a list of expansion programs, incentive programs as well. And not that I'll, be involved in the specifics of those, but I wanted to make sure I had a good understanding of what those programs were so that in the case where somebody was coming to me with a request, I could either give them as much information accurately as possible or send them in the right direction over to my contact at the state so that they know what possibilities are available to them. And so that's just a snapshot. While those projects I highlighted don't cover the entire breadth of what staff's been working on, it does highlight some of the efforts that we've been kind of working on in the last couple of years, and hopefully a lot of those will come to fruition in 2020 and 2021. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if you all have any. Thank you.
Great summary, David. Thank you so much. Great presentation. Anybody from the chamber have any questions? Mike, did you have anything you wanted to bring to the forefront here today?
Well, just thanks for the presentation. I did have some notes just on some chamber stuff so the council kind of knows what we're doing on our side. Our new member 2018 versus 2019, we were up about 20% on members. It's the highest membership we've ever had in the chamber in 2019. So our retention rate's about 92%. So most people that are signing up are staying, which is a good thing, which means we're providing some type of benefit. We are, as far as our income and expenses, we had probably the most successful golf tournament we ever had this year. So our expenses, or our income was up over 100% of what we figured, and our expenses were around 90%. So we did really well this year. Just some events that we have going on. We have, and you guys stop me if there's anything I'm missing, but just what I'd make note of. We have this will be the 13th year. We'll be hosting the Candidate Forum, which is kind of in partnership with the city for the council, mayor races, and school board races. This will be our 25th annual golf tournament. Isn't that right? So this year. So it'll be our 25th anniversary for our golf tournament. And then we do our annual pumpkin auction, which we raise a bunch of scholarship money with the school district. We have Raymore Day at the K. We had about 1,000 people show up in 2019 to do that event. So that's just kind of some bullet points on some stuff that we've been doing, along with the new resident packets and ribbon cuttings and some of that kind of stuff as well. So,
okay. Any questions of the chair? Yeah, Mr. Circo.
Mr. Metzger, you guys have locked in a date for the Day at the K, April. I think Sherry mentioned a date.
Yes, there's a date.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, it's April 17th, I believe.
A Friday or Sunday?
Friday.
Friday, okay.
Friday. No, we're going. It's actually in New York, so we're heading there to. Hope y'all can make it.
Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excellent presentation tonight, Mr. Gress. I just have a general question for yourself and the chamber members. With regard to you do an excellent job, the staff does an excellent job externally reaching out to different organizations and businesses, trying to recruit and attract to the community. In your BRE program, how often do you present a similar program of opportunities for business owners in the community to grow into available spaces, whether it be businesses, structures, or property, to advertise what is local to them as options? Do you do that often at the chamber, or for the presentation to the chamber?
So in my capacity, I've still have yet to have the opportunity to make a presentation like this specific to the chamber, but I do see some value in keeping them in the loop as far as what's going on in the community, what things might be coming down the pipeline. Specific to some of the BRE stuff, I mean, that system is a very specific system to that's provided by the state, and so the questions and format of that is very specific to adding data to their database so that they can provide the reports on different business climate depending on the community that you're in. And so that specific platform is something that's very specific to that program. But I agree with you that there might be an opportunity to work more closely with the chamber and reach out to some local businesses so that they're all informed with what projects are coming down the pipeline.
I agree, because I believe there's opportunities there, not only from those who are in existing office spaces, or in particular, you made a comment about how Compass Health is, relocating. I don't know what the plans are for the existing footprint. There may be some other opportunities to create some incubators or whatever. There may be some home-based businesses in the community that are looking now to expand and looking for a space. And staying local is the key, keeping that opportunity there to grow our own. So that's some things to kind of consider when you look at, as you move further into the position. So thank you.
Anyone else?
This is kind of random, but so all the different projects, do you guys forecast how that'll grow the population of the city, or any other financial numbers behind that? Just kind of give us a picture of what the future looks like next 2 or 3 years or 5 years.
Great question. As part of that, to answer that is yes, we do look at that. And with some of the projects, they provide us with specific estimates on what they anticipate job creation to be. So specific to the Van Trust one I brought up when they were first working with the city, that estimate is anywhere from 1,200 to 1,700 jobs by the time the project is complete. And so we look at that, how many of those jobs are going to be folks that are going to be wanting to live in Raymore, and is the trends of our residential development that we're seeing, is that something that's going to match up with that demand to provide those housing options for folks to live here once they've secured that job. So I don't have any specific estimates or numbers for you off the top of my head, but it is something that we look at as a staff to evaluate the future of these projects.
Anyone else have anything? Oh, Mr. Holman.
I would concur with Councilmember Townsend's comments, and another thing that we probably don't think a lot about in the realm of economic development, but it certainly does have an impact. We may make projections on population growth, as does the school district, and as they plan for new building construction or expansion of existing buildings. Many of the projects that we're looking at from a capital improvement standpoint, both within our CIP program and within the potential no tax increase bond issue, will certainly have a huge impact. If we were able to get that project off the ground of widening I-49 to 3 lanes down to North Cass Parkway and replacement of the bridge at 58, as well as the other slate of projects within that portfolio, should have a profound impact on our businesses. And those are kind of we don't think about it from a standpoint a lot of times of the first tier thinking of how that would impact our existing business, but it certainly should have a very positive impact on our businesses as well as our residents.
I agree. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Grass, yeah, you did make comment how you're getting in front of all the businesses in the community, and how when they want to reach out for Q&As, what's going on with the city, the growth, trying to get what they need or don't need as business in the community. I like to hear that. That's very nice, because I think they have years look for that. That way they can connect, hey, we'd like to have this. How's that going? Because I know they love competition. They don't mind the competition, because the competition means growth, and that's good.
Yeah, Mr. Metzger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would also say for the council members, we would love to have you guys as an individual member of the chamber. So you can join as an individual member even if you're not a business. So I know like Mr. Circo, he's just an individual member of the chamber, has been for a while. Business now, was for a while. But you're more than welcome to join, and you can come to those meetings and see what happens in them as well. So.
Thank you. Did you want to give any updates on any changes in the contract with the chamber or anything like that?
Staff will be proposing that the contract stay in its existing form, the existing amounts. It's $10,000, and no changes to the terms or the conditions, sir.
Okay, great. Did the chamber have any input on that, or good to go?
Yeah, no, sir. We had our retreat on Friday, and we were all good to go on everything.
Okay.
So.
All right. Excellent. Tabitha?
From the chamber, I would like to say thank you for the city with partnering with us on that. I mean, we do try to use your money wisely. We understand that it's kind of our money too, so you don't want to overspend. So we just want to appreciate the continued effort because it really does make a difference. So just wanted to make sure you guys knew that.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, if there's nothing else, we'll move on, and want to say thank you very much for being here tonight. I know a lot of the new members are here. 3 out of the, you guys are the 3 new members, aren't you, on the board? So thank you for being here tonight. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. Next item on our agenda is the no tax increase bond issue update from Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. The council will remember that at our last work session, as far as the projects were concerned for the future no tax increase bond issue, that we had pretty much finalized what the projects were going to be. That one of the concerns going into that is we knew that there was going to be another issue on the ballot that involved a levy increase. At the time, I actually thought that that levy increase was going to be 11 cents. We found out today it's actually going to be a 12-cent levy increase. Since the last meeting, when we had suggested an April date for the bond issue, we have learned that there are going to actually be 2 and possibly 3 other no tax increase bond issues on the April ballot, and there is going to be another levy increase proposal of 17 cents on the issue on the ballot. That means that there is for certain going to be requests for levy increases of 28 cents and at least 2 and possibly 3 other no tax increase bond issues. It would be my recommendation to the council that we delay for 4 months and put this on the ballot in August when there are a limited number of items that can be on from the local level. Only, I believe, municipalities and sewer districts can put items on the August ballot. Otherwise, so I doubt seriously if the sewer district is going to be putting anything on. No. You would know that better than I, sir. And I think that there is real danger in the conversation that would be had, as Mr. Icky and I were saying. In any given point in time like that, with only being able to put forward information about the issue because we can't advocate for the issue, there is a considerable amount of white noise relative to the election that you have to overcome. If the white noise that we're having to overcome, and I've been in this situation before. I was telling Mike today, I've been in 7 bond issues, lost 1, passed 6. But if you get into a situation where you're trying to overcome somebody else's white noise with your white noise, it looks like you're adversarial. And these other groups deserve the same chance that we do. I informed 2 of them today that I would be making this recommendation to the council tonight, and I think that they were both grateful about that particular situation, because we would be adding 2 to it, because we'd have to have a parks and a street one. So that's a long list of no tax increase with 2 tax increases shoved in there, all at the local level. It'd be my recommendation. So just kind of looking for thumbs up, thumbs down from the council tonight as far as moving it to August, and we would prepare accordingly. And we would still be beginning an information campaign that there's going to be a 2020 issue that's going to be out there.
Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fearborn, thank you, and I trust your judgment on this. And I do have one small question. It's a very, very small part of the no tax increase bond, but how will this affect our possible partnership with the replacement of the I-49 bridge and possibly widening of I-49?
It does not. That, the build grant goes in the fall, so we would know either way whether or not this had passed. And if it doesn't pass on the bond issue, we still have 2 backup plans for that the county has worked out with us.
Okay, so
But
this
we
will sense
want it
out.
on the ballot because I think it's a selling point for the ballot.
I would agree with that. So in a sense, this has really no effect on that. The moving this back 4 months or so has no effect on that.
No, we would still be submitting in the fall.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Although a bit personally disappointed, I concur with your assessment, sir. It would sound like, and there's no way of having a crystal ball, but it sounds like maybe our 2 bond issues could be the only thing on the ballot in August. And while I think the streets and infrastructure project is sold by that I-49 58 bridge, I think that's going to carry that project on its own merit. The Parks project might suffer from what you talk about in particular, and it could provide some competition for the other one as well. Plus, by August, we're into moderate weather. People are outside. They're probably going to be a little more in tune with Parks projects at that time, especially if there's nothing competing with them. I did have a question. I know the county was planning to put a no tax increase issue, and the library, and I think South Metro was one of the other ones. I did not have a feel for which all the taxing districts.
And the reason I kind of hesitated to use any names is I don't want anybody to think that we're blaming you. But they were so thankful today that South Metro is actually putting on a 17-cent increase and a no tax increase bond issue together. They as you may be aware, they have just had an upgrade to their ISO rating, and they need this to keep the upgrade to their iOS rating. So they need more personnel, and they need the equipment for those personnel. So that's why the dual on them. And the other 2, you're correct on, sir.
I also think that occasionally when you get so many projects on a ballot from varying taxing districts, there are those that are very strong anti-tax advocates that they will vote out of emotion against all of them because there is a tax increase on one of them. So I think there's value in that.
If it was just the no tax increase bond issues, I'd still be recommending April. When you're looking at a pure 28-cent levy increase, folks are going to start voting with their heart instead of their head. Gosh darn it, went right. Oh, it's interesting, sir, that you would bring up the parks projects, because before I brought this to you all, I wanted to consult with Sid Douglas and with Mr. Goffey. And Mr. Goffey actually said that exact same thing. He said, as far as your parks projects are concerned, our history has been people are more apt to vote for a parks bond issue when they're out experiencing the parks and they're experiencing all of those amenities, and especially since ours proposes expanding those amenities that are already in place, and we've kept our promise with that. It also does give us the opportunity to get started on Kentucky Road, so the last of our bond issue projects are actually underway from the previous one. So if I don't hear any objections from the council, we'll move forward with the assumption that it's going to be in August. Oh, one final item. Checking with both Sid and, because it's an even year, we do not suffer from the increased necessary percentage. It's still a 4/7 to pass, so. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Barber, did you have anything to add? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. And somebody told me they wish they hadn't brought this up, the snow plan.
I watched the meeting last week, and I know that Mr. Icky double cursed this by actually saying we may be cursing it by bringing it up, so.
Yeah.
And so with that said, Mr. Krass and Ms. Harmer.
Officer. Just wanted to update you on next week's work session. We'll be holding our joint meeting with the Chamber of Commerce. We'll also be hearing an update from the Public Works Department as well as the Communications Department on our snow operations and communications. We've been working so far to avoid any major severe weather, so we're hopefully not going to be jinxing it by now talking about the operations here in the city.
You just had to zing him there. That was good.
So with that, we will, I think I can do it. So we'll move into our winter weather response plan. Snow and ice control. It's one of our most visible city services that Public Works provides. We are constantly working to improve our service and level of service. We attempt to be as efficient and effective as possible. The safety of the traveling public and our employees are paramount with that. And I can't emphasize this more, that no two events are ever the same. We are battling Mother Nature. Constantly, things change. We shift on the fly. Our management organization is here. We have the assistant director of operations runs the day shift. We have a night shift leader. We also coordinate closely with police dispatch whenever the crews are on the road. We start looking very, very early. We are looking constantly weeks out for weather. We kind of use a system of colors. Green is no adverse weather. Yellow, snow or ice is predicted. That's when we will, if ice is predicted, start our pre-treatment process, work into our 12-hour shifts. We go to orange. The snow is imminent. The entire shift is on duty. They are out checking road conditions. They will start removing snow when accumulations reach approximately an inch. Very rarely, but sometimes we do get into this where drifting or other conditions make it so bad for the crews and that we just stand down until the wind lays down or whatever. Black is where conditions, and then again, where we just cease operations. And then right now, this is kind of where we are. With the current storm is into a post-storm cleanup, finish up phase. We have divided the city into 3 zones. We have the area north of 58 Highway, the area 58 Highway to Lucy Webb Road, and then from Lucy Webb Road south. You can see we have divided, this is kind of the distribution of roads and priority routes within the various road networks. Red are our major thoroughfares, yellow are our secondary routes, and then we get into the blue and the green, which is the residential roads. Typical route assignments, the red and orange, we assign the large dump trucks with a salt spreader. We have 3 of those, one for each zone. The blue is our smaller intermediate 1-ton trucks with either salt or a brine application, and then typically the pickup trucks assist with the blue routes and then primarily are working on the cul-de-sacs and dead ends. We attempt as much as possible on the major thoroughfares to get down to bare pavement. Some of the secondary routes, there will be some snowpack on them. Residential roads, especially like an event we had yesterday where it's such a long duration and traffic gets onto it, they're going to be snowpack. And that's kind of the condition where a lot of our secondary routes are, right? And neighborhood routes are as close of this evening's shift. We will be back out tomorrow dressing things as the sun comes up and we get some warming temperatures and the salt becomes effective again. Right now, we've treated the major routes. When temperatures get below 20 degrees, the salt is just not effective. We do have a crew on this evening pushing as much of the soft snow off as they can, and then they will be on to deal with any slick spots or anything the rest of the evening. Unavoidable impacts, windrows across driveways, blocked accesses to mailboxes. Occasionally, the windrow off the plow does take out a mailbox or 2. We do note those and replace them as quickly as we can. Occasionally, again, sod and sprinkler damage around the curves where the snow is deep enough where the guys can't always follow the curb. One of our challenges is where do we put the snow on a cul-de-sac? There is typically so many driveways, so many mailboxes, parked cars. You know, we have attempted to do this in the past. A lot of times during the heavier events, we wind up with a lot of snow in the driveways. What we have started going towards, depending on the event, is something more like this, where we'll make an initial pass around the cul-de-sac and then a second pass with the blade or opposite to traffic to kind of push things to the middle. That gives equivalent lanes of open that any other street has. We don't push as much snow into the driveways, and we've been fairly successful with that. And then typically, with the weather we have here, within a few days, that just melts. You can follow our progress on the snow map that we push out on our snow page. We do have a snow desk phone line that is open. We've actually changed this. We are now open, the same as the shifts. So we run 24/7 with the snow desk. And this is an example of the map that people will see when they visit. The green shows areas that have been treated. The black is areas that we have not gotten to yet. Treated does not mean clear. Treated means we've been down there, we've made a pass, we've possibly put material down, or we'll be coming back to put material down. I am going to now turn it over to Melissa and kind of walk you through our communication plan.
So when we know that weather is coming, I will get information from either Ryan Murdoch or Mike Cross or both, and Steve Welch in Public Works also, as soon as they have a plan for putting the crews, getting them ready to go. So I will pretty much just share either direct information from Mr. Murdoch or everything from the National Weather Service to our social media. I will post the updated snow maps on our city website, and then in large emergencies, we will make the calls on the Everbridge. I was going to say Evergy. Sorry, on the I knew that wasn't right. On the Everbridge system, and like I did this weekend on our website, there's the mobile view and regular computer view. I put a message on the top. It runs on the top of every single page on our website that leads you to the snow removal page and the snow map for all of the snow information that we have available. And that's an image of that snow removal page. And then, of course, new Facebook and Twitter posts from our city and emergency management pages when any changes are made or a new snow map is put out. And I have made a couple of short videos to try to help people understand not to crowd the plow. I don't know how to hit play. There you go. From my mouse.
Our 3 dump trucks we have in the fleet, when it's fully loaded, it approaches 25 tons in rolling weight. One of the things drivers can do is don't crowd the plow. These trucks don't stop very easily, don't pass the plow, and just give the drivers plenty of room.
What's that look like? Still just the side mirror. I mean, unless I lean over a little, then I can finally see it. All the way to the edge of his the far inside edge of his license plate.
Okay. So we'll measure it now.
Okay. How far is that?
80 feet.
That far. 80 feet is how far you need to be behind those trucks so they can see you.
That distance, you can only see this much of the
Yeah, say that again.
At this distance, you can only see this half of the vehicle directly behind. If you're driving behind a dump truck and you cannot see the driver in the mirror, they cannot see you.
And again, we try to point everyone to our snow page. That's where the most up-to-date information is. And I guess I can turn it back over to you for our.
That is, yeah, because I think. I'm sorry. The next is.
The end?
That's it. We are available for questions.
Questions? Yes, Mr. Barber.
Mr. Grass, I had a question. We've changed the design of our cul-de-sacs, so does that help with the snow removal?
Yes, it gives us a kind of a sanctuary in the middle. It does a couple of things. We don't have the vast sea of asphalt, and environmentally, the center is more of a water quality area. And then it also allows us a refuge to a place to pile the snow, so we can avoid pushing it in the front of the driveways as much as possible.
I had another question. My trash service went today and it went fine, but does Constable contact us? What's the kind of the protocol on that? And
I will turn that over to Mr. Icky.
Yes, sir. And actually, Mr. Constable and myself were speaking on Sunday evening, just trying to get an idea of it. And honestly, I was even trying to give him the out, letting him know that with weather being severe and possibly more snow, we would understand if he wanted to delay or hold back a day. And he insisted and even had a really good rationale for if it were ice or sleeting, he would want to. But because this snowstorm was the snow was so white or so light and powdery that his trucks actually moved pretty well with the weight, and so he wasn't concerned. He watches the weather just as much as our folks in Public Works and stays apprised of the situation as well.
Yeah, Mr. Burke.
I don't know if this is possible, but would we be able to see the snow map on the screen? I tried to access it a couple times and I haven't been able to see it.
That's a lot of snow.
It has been running very slow to load up.
Well, then never mind.
Well, looks like it's still thinking. Yeah.
Is there anything we can do about that? Are people waiting a long time and giving up because they can't see it? Can we do anything about the speed?
Yeah, we will talk to the folks tomorrow. We just noticed it this afternoon. I think they need to reboot. It's because it's managed by a third party. I think they need to reboot their servers, but I'll be working with IT tomorrow on that.
Okay. Mr. Holman.
I had more of a comment than a question. I greatly appreciate where we've gone with this and how much this has evolved. I remember, as it is with most places, we were concerned, or municipalities and roadway authorities were concerned with the operation itself. Get the snow moved, get it out of the way. But demands have changed of the public, and so now it has become a much more comprehensive process involving observation of that weather well in advance, communications out to our citizens, opportunities for them to gather more information as they see fit, and again, preparation before the event. Even though there's the operational benefit of dropping the brine, from a citizen standpoint, you see those lines on the road. That's important to them. They know that the crews are aware of this and they've done something, even if it's not that effective, because the weather conditions will affect whether or not that has great value or limited value. And then post-storm cleanup, even we've passed the major event. We're not expecting any more snow. They'll see those trucks out tomorrow, and that makes a solid perception with our citizens of what we are doing as a city, and I think they're very, very grateful for that. I was explaining to my wife today, I said, this is like anything else that we do. It's not hard, but it's very complex. I said, for example, people will curse when they try and get out of the Price Chopper parking lot and their tires spin. I go, this is privately maintained roadway. I said, those people aren't nearly as comprehensive as our road crews. I go, but you pull up to the light there at Silver Lake, and you're going to notice that the crews have made a very strong attempt to make sure that's dry pavement as close as they can get to it, because they realize cars are moving from a dead stop on the light and moving forward. I said, this is a very professional process, and I'm grateful for it. I don't think everybody sees that, but they see some of those elements, and I really think that we've come a long way to beyond the basic service. We've really moved past that, and I think it's great. Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Burke.
One observation, well done last night. I went, as soon as we found out school was out, my daughter and all of her friends got together, and so I have a Jeep, so I had to go around and get all the girls to bring them to the slumber party. And afterwards, I drove around and checked out the roads because it's fun to drive in my Jeep. But I thought it was very well thought out to do single passes on streets, to hit as many of the streets early as possible and then come back later. That makes a huge difference to people when they see at least one pass has been done and they at least have a lane down the middle of their street. That's so much better than nothing. And people really appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Circo.
Another comment, yeah, like Mr. Burke said, my biggest complaint last year were, of course, people in cul-de-sacs being last and getting the snow maybe pushed up by their driveways like you talked, and come up with a new idea, going to one pass, getting those things knocked out pretty quick, and then come back and finishing up is a very good idea. Putting it in the middle, that was again a complaint they didn't want in the driveway, so that's a great idea. And coming back from the Chiefs game yesterday, we were driving in, and my wife and I were driving, hitting that snow off 58 highway, on the bridge. And my wife said, they haven't cleared it. I said, we're not in Raymore yet. She goes, that's right, we're in Belton. We got to Raymore, it was cleared. I said, see, we're good.
Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate the presentation. Did you have something else? No. Okay.
Telling him to stay there.
Oh, you got to stay.
You need to stay there for the next agenda. Nice try, though.
And the next item is the 2020 budget amendments. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. Wanted to at least get through the first 2 months of the new budget year before we started presenting you with amendments. I do always remind the council, and I know the council definitely gets this. More than a lot of our documents, the budget is a living document. It's no good if we don't look at it all the time and just leave it on the shelf. And in this case, we've seen some areas that we feel need addressing that have come up both before and since the beginning of the year. And I'll just take these in order. Won't read them through because I know you have all had the materials in front of you. The first one is for a series of budget amendments for our court system. This was caused because we had a specific incident where the judge was physically threatened. The court administrator was present when that took place. I think they both came away feeling very threatened. The chief and I did kind of a review of possible changes that could be done. You can see on there the ones that we've already implemented, locking the front door at an earlier time rather than just leaving it open, and making sure that everybody leaves at the same time and together, and that there is somebody there to get them to their vehicles. The other changes that we would propose, and of course, after the chief and I had the opportunity to meet and she'd had the chance to talk with her staff, the chief and I met with the court personnel and the judge to get their input on all of these. So they've seen these and vetted them, and actually they've made some of the recommendations that are associated with this. The third item that had not been, that was, we were in the lobby transition, so at the time we did not have the event button. I hate to call it a panic button, but we didn't have the event button installed. The intention was to upgrade that button anyway, and as you can see from what we've written to you all, it is a significant upgrade. They actually walked me through it down in dispatch, and before, if you hit the button, basically a red strobe went off, and they knew something was going on at one of the locations up here, but that's all the information that they would have had, is that something's going on and we need to get upstairs, and they didn't know if it would be at that window, out in front. They had no idea. Now the camera from where it actually flashes up shows them exactly where it's at. They've been trained not to disarm the button. from their location, even if they hit it by mistake. It's not as easy to hit by mistake because it's actually now a push rather than a toggle that they could hit with their knee. So significant upgrades to the system for everybody's safety. The two budget amendments that we would be proposing relative to this particular, or three, I'm sorry, that we'd be proposing relative to this issue. All of the numbers that you see on here are conservative. We would recommend broadcast cameras for in here, or non-broadcast cameras, but security cameras in the four corners of the chambers here, what would then be the courtroom here, because we're not allowed to call it chambers on court night. At a conservative cost of $3,500, those cameras would be on all the time from a security standpoint. Obviously, they would only be broadcasting to downstairs so that we could, and recording to downstairs so that we would have records of any incidents that would occur. And at the same time, even when the button got hit in here, if something occurred, we would be able to use those cameras as well to see exactly what was going on in all four corners of the room. We would recommend that to the council's attention. In spite of the presence of very, very well-trained officers in the lobby, using the chief's term, oft-used term of harden the target, do everything you can to harden the target, we would recommend to the council that we get a walk-through metal detector for the front door. The new lobby really lends itself to that sort of a layout, one door in, one door out, real similar to what you see at the airport or down at the federal courthouse. An individual would be there based on whether or not you accept the third recommendation associated with this. It would either be an officer or a bailiff. Would actually be there. Valuables go into, or metal objects go into a tub gets pushed through, they walk through the metal detector. We would recommend that just like down at the federal courthouse or at the airport, if that detector goes off, then the officer, whoever they were, would then step forward and wand the person to try to get a more exact location. The detector that we're actually looking for is pretty detailed. It had, the original one that we were looking at had 15 points that light up on the side of it depending on where the metal is detected. But they still, I think from a comfort issue, we'd like to have that wand as well. The final budget amendment associated with this would be to go to using full-time bailiffs. This has a number of advantages. We would actually hire former sworn police officers, post-certified, and use them as bailiffs to the court. They would be dressed in uniform, but the uniform would be a civilian uniform. The advantages are, and the judge felt this as well, three primary that we see. You would get a consistency of personnel serving. There would only be 4 people hired. One would take the first court night, one team would take the first court night, the second team could take the second. If anybody was sick or couldn't actually make it, we would use somebody from the second team to replace that person. Might have a 5th just on standby, letting them know that if we needed them because something was very, very odd, that we could bring them in. The judge would, over time, make a choice on who's out in the lobby and who is actually the bailiff within the courtroom, depending on what he would judge to be their abilities. They would continue to take training. They would be carrying a sidearm. The third advantage to this is from a cost standpoint, we save a considerable amount of money hiring a bailiff because anytime the officers are up here, we're paying them overtime to be in the lobby. So this particular one would actually represent probably an expense reduction. The other item is we do not delineate those officers' overtime. It's officers' overtime, which means the court is not paying for the officers to be out here, PD is, and we've done everything else that we can to try to get that separation between the prosecutor's office and the police department and the court. This one was a glaring situation where we were actually using PD personnel to directly serve the court on court night, which is probably not a good idea. If we were ever audited, I'm sure they would have brought it up. So the total for, again, the conservative total for the cameras is $3,500. The conservative total for the metal detectors is $4,250. The conservative total for the personnel change to bailiffs instead of officers is $5,600. Because there might be possibilities that we would use the first two in other situations, specifically the security cameras, maybe a meeting that we want the security cameras on for the city council, or a planning and zoning meeting where the chair asks that they be turned on. And the same thing with the walk-through metal detectors. If there was ever a situation outside of the court, we would not want to be paying for those things to be used outside of the court with court funds. So we would recommend that if you accept these to come forward to you in regular meeting, that those two items actually be a budget amendment out of buildings and grounds. Expenses added to that. The $5,600 specifically coming out of court, because that's where those funds should actually be coming out of, because they're only serving the court. That's the court budget amendment being proposed. Would be happy to answer any questions from council on that particular one.
Mr. Berg.
Not a question, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a question, but a comment. I like the format here where you give the problem, you give the rationale for, how you're going to solve it, and then the budget line. I think that makes it very easy for anyone that's not a part of this body to read it and see what we're doing, and it looks very easy to see that things are being done with a problem-solving, cause and effect kind of situation, not just spending money. Thank you.
Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also concur and appreciate the separation of the equipment from the court salaries when it comes to the budget, because I was concerned about, not only just on court night, but others sessions that are held in here from the other volunteer groups that come in, volunteers who serve on our different boards, that have the similar security concerns for opportunities that may come in just because City Hall is open. And I appreciate separating out to where that those equipment can be used for security for those sessions as well. So I appreciate that.
Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you. I have a few questions. First, I'm wondering, do we currently have cameras that record in the lobby? Or would these be really kind of the first ones upstairs? On the metal detectors, so they would be out there all the time, but really only used on court night?
No.
Because we wouldn't have someone manning them except on court night, right?
No, these are, even the stand-up metal detector is actually, it's 150 pounds and it rolls back on a pair of wheels. We'd put it in the elevator, take it downstairs and put it in the stairwell when it wasn't being used.
So it would still only be used on court night unless we had an
a-
unusual circumstance where we wanted to use it another time?
Exactly.
Okay. How about cameras? Are there cameras in the lobby?
There are cameras in the lobby right now, yeah.
Okay, I thought there were. And then as far as the bailiff idea, so would officers have the opportunity to work that during their off-duty time? How about our reserves? I was just curious how many reserves we have right now. Would that be an option for them? I wonder about that just because I know for a while we've been struggling to hire officers to add 4 more positions, even part-time with no benefits. I'm just curious, do we really think we can find 4 people to do that?
We've probably already had 6 to 8 people express extreme interest in doing it, yeah.
Okay. So would it be an opportunity for off-duty or reserves?
The problem with that is, if we're using them, there is always the possibility that they're going to be called in. What we like the idea of is, and what the judge liked the idea of, is having 2 set crews that he knows exactly who they're going to be, and they're just hired and they're permanent.
And can I wrap up with just a comment? So when I first read this, I was really not impressed with the idea of a metal detector. I've read a lot as far as schools and comfort level of children and feelings of safety with metal detectors, and people generally tend to feel less safe when they have to walk through a metal detector every time they come through a door, just because it heightens their anxiety knowing that there's a need for that. So I don't like the idea of having a metal detector in front of our door all the time. I like the look of the new lobby. I felt like it was really an overreaction to an incident that happened once. But that's coming from the wife of a police officer who they're threatened all the time, 24/7. Same with schools. I don't know, I felt like it was an overreaction.
Mr. Parker?
Yeah, thank you. I'll be a little redundant. I do like how this was put together. It makes a lot of sense. I do like the separation with the metal detector. I do think that metal detectors are becoming kind of the norm. You can't go into a stadium. You can't do much anymore without going through them. So I think they're a deterrent as much as anything. But I think they can be very helpful. I do have a question. I look up here on Thursday night, and to me, it seems like, is court growing? I mean, does that seem to be more and more people? So my comment and I guess question is, the more people we have, the more potential issues we could have. So I think all this we're not probably going to have a smaller court. I guess I use attendance a year from now or 2 years from now. I'd say the potential is just going to be growing and growing as our population grows. So, all right, thank you.
Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Probably a question for the chief. I've been up here a few times on Thursday night, and it can get crowded. But I guess people need to understand, this isn't your run-of-the-mill, everyday Raymore people on Thursday night. I think there's a high percentage of people that come here on court who are from other municipalities that have problems and they've been arrested or whatever, but they don't live just here in Raymore. They might live in north here in Grandview, a different area. So it is not, so it's a lot to say, I like the detectors, because a lot of times you don't know who these people are.
That's absolutely true. We make a significant number of arrests from people who live outside the community.
And they're coming in here on court night, and I think that'd be a good idea.
Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If anyone can recall the words Ms. Hubach would talk about court night, she would be very much in favor of this. And I did work in a school for 4 years where part of my duty was to run the metal detector every once in a while, and I caught a student who I thought was a very nice girl, and met 3 or 4 members or generations of her family, and she had a razor blade in the roof of her mouth, holding it there with her tongue. You just never know what kind of things people are going to do that you would just never imagine. I think it's a good, and it's everywhere you go anymore. You go to the ball game, and people remember, okay, I need to leave stuff in the car. I don't want to throw away my favorite pocket knife. I don't want to throw away whatever, or have to go back to my car. I think once people know, it's going to make things better, and it will be less and less necessary.
Mr. Townsend.
Just to clarify, the metal detector is portable. It's not permanent being installed, correct?
Right. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Circo.
Oh, yeah, one other comment. Yeah, like when Mark was talking, Joe was talking, these officers we have on court night they're out front, but there's just a few of them. We have lots of people coming and going, and they cannot keep an eye on everybody who's roaming in and out that door. So even the officers' safeties are generally at large here because they're trying to keep an eye on a lot of people. So I think the metal detectors, that's a good reason. So they have to, I think we need one of those, just the safety of our officers alone that are in there trying to control that many people.
True, and as Mr. Fearborn said, we've already changed some of those processes, like locking the doors earlier so that people can't go in and out, back to their cars for a weapon or something like that. So, in preparation for, some of these changes, we've already done, some of that with the blessing of the court.
Mr. Dogwan.
So one other quick question. So if the metal detector is portable and it's only going to be used on court night, how often do you think it would be used for other things? And if it was used for other things, would those same bailiffs come in to use it, or who would kind of be in charge of it? I'm kind of questioning if it's only going to be for court, maybe it should be a court cost and not a building cost.
And the only reason we moved it to regular is just if there was something where the council said, you know what, we had a threat against us for tonight, for one council night, we would like that to be out there. No, we would not use the bailiffs. I'm sure that then we would have, in fact, we would not want to use the bailiffs because they're being paid out of court, so we wouldn't want that mix. So we'd have police officers doing it if it was a city function rather than a court function, or a P&Z meeting or anything like that, yeah.
And we have police officers obviously up here on council nights, so, you know, if there was ever an occasion, you know, to have it here, it would be manned by the police officers.
Anyone else? Next.
Is it okay if we bring this to the council formally? Perfect. Next budget amendment being proposed is out of the restricted revenue fund for parks. We have the rink, and you see on here the brochure, or the kind of the outline for it and what we'll be posting for it. But one of the items that has been discussed by the council and discussed by staff relative to the rink is, and I think that Mr. Mustine actually said it at your meeting last week, I think I heard him say something to the effect of bring your own skates. That's problematic because just like bowling, a lot of people have their own and some people need to rent. So Mr. Mustine did a significant amount of research, as you see on here, with different companies to come up with what the standardized package is that would draw the most cover as far as people wanting to rent sizes, and then got some input on the style that should be used for those same people who are coming in with this soft style of being less harsh on the feet. So the use of funds would obviously be the purchase of the skates, to increase the activity at the rink and to help assure the use of and success of that particular amenity. The source of funds that we would be recommending to the City Council, as the City Council knows, we have a significant number of projects that sit in the restricted revenue fund, including a number of parks projects. Associated with that, we have $75,000 sitting in there for a future park master plan, that money of which we're probably not going to be using with the new comprehensive plan, but it is in there and has been in for some years. A number of the previous bond issue projects sat in there as far as the money that had been given by the council to supplement the bond issue funds. So those all earn interest as the years go by. We would be proposing that the $8,750 amendment necessary for the purchase of these skates and a professional level skate sharpener come out of the interest on that. In this particular item, because it's under a $10,000 purchase, the city manager is actually authorized to make the purchase without going before the council, but because it's not budgeted anywhere and we're using kind of an unusual source of funds, I felt highly compelled to come before the council to see what you thought about this particular item. That concludes staff report on this particular one, sir.
Any comments? Ms. Berenson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Filborn, I appreciate you bringing this before us. I think this will make a huge improvement over the skate rink. One very small question, and maybe our rink isn't big enough to account for this, but so there are two different kinds of skates. There are the more common figure skating skates and then the hockey skates. Are we going to rent both of those?
This particular package of skates will be the figure skating / recreational. They're designed for our type of rink. They're not hockey skates.
Not hockey style?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Sizes, obviously, we'll have pretty much sizes for everybody, even like Mr. Icky?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
Not singling anybody out.
necessarily. The package that have been recommended by the 4 to 5 companies that we contacted are basically from the smallest kids that can do that up through size 12. After size 12 and above, they're specialized purchases, and they recommended that we go through a season and see the need for that, and then we purchase, if that need becomes a necessity, then we purchase those individually and not as a group bulk.
I'll squeeze into a 12. Sorry, Mike, you're out.
Anyone else? Mr. Jacobson.
Yeah, just a quick question. I like the idea of renting skates. Just to kind of put my mind at ease, what situation do we arrive in as far as an increased risk of liability if someone falls using our skates, if someone says these skates are too small or too big? What would our situation be in that case?
Our liability for everything associated with the ice rink is nearly identical to the same sorts of liabilities that you would see and open areas that you would see at our skate park. Same sort of a deal, with the exception of obviously the rental of these, but you rent and you skate at your own risk, and that's why we wanted to be sure and provide you all with this, because that's almost first on all of these types of lists.
I saw that. Thank you.
It doesn't mean that they're not going to sue us.
Yes, Mr. Holman.
A question, a comment. The question is, can you do this yesterday? This is good stuff. And 2, the only thing I could see on here, having a little background in this, you may run into a little bit of an operational issue with the driver's license to rent, mainly when mom lets the 4 13-year-old girls out and they come up and mom drives off. And so just an FYI heads up, that one, most people, yeah, they're going to have an adult there that's going to be able to do that, but you may just want to account for that before you open up, because you will run into that. They're going to drop off 4 to 6, and they're all under the age of 16. Well, I'm not old enough to drive, so this is pretty good, and I think you'll find the same thing. When I worked, we typically carried 1 to 2 pairs of those above 12 size. I agree. I think that's a good strategy. Wait and see what the demand is, and then you may buy 1 or 2 sizes above and keep those. They don't get checked out very often, but that's pretty good planning. I think it looks good.
Mr. Townsend, did you have something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Holman touched on it a little bit. It was just, should this pass, first and second read, what's the timeline of acquiring material?
The skates are in stock, so as soon as the second read and Mr. Fearborn has authorized the purchase, the delivery would be 7 to 8 days.
And provided the ice is frozen?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Holman?
Do we need 2 reads on this? You're authorized to make this purchase under $10,000. Can't we just do this without a read of the council and get it done?
We need to have a budget amendment, sir.
I see. Got it. Thank you.
The budget amendment. Yes, Mr.
I was talking to Joe here. I guess the younger children, 6th grade, 7th, they carry school IDs. So maybe we can make a recommendation that they have their school ID with them for the children who don't have a driver's license. Because I think he said again, 6th grade, they have school IDs, so maybe that helps some.
It's possible to get them younger, but I don't know.
I didn't want to get too far into the weeds of operation. It was just more of an observation. I'm fairly comfortable staff's going to figure that out on their own. I just wanted to point it out, just something to be aware of. I didn't mean to really put any kind of overlay on that, just something to think about.
DNA, fingerprints, in case they walk off with their skates, Yeah.
Every one of those kids probably has an iPhone worth more than those skates they could use for a deposit.
Good point.
Okay.
Terrific. We'll be bringing all of these as well. The next one took on a slightly different format as far as the presentation was concerned, because it's actually not a budget amendment calling for any sort of a expense increase. We just want to create the position, and as the council knows, every page of the budget is the budget. So even if we're adding a personnel position, we need to do a budget amendment for it. So at this time, we are only proposing that the position be added for when these people, we have seen this time and time again, that we are losing quality people in public works because we have created I'm going to call it an artificial glass ceiling of professionalism. When we slot that thing in and only have the two, and we've got people out there who want to get more, who want to be more instructed, and we're not compensating them for it when they get it, they're going to find another place to go where they get that sort of compensation and that sort of recognition for that. So with this one, we would be proposing, and you can behind it on this particular page of it, you see exactly what the requirements would be for each of the different levels. But we would propose and recommend to the council the creation within the current year's budget of a Worker 3 position within the Public Works Department.
Questions? Mr. Burke?
Question. So level 3 is more advanced than level 2 or less? Okay. Yes. That's what I thought so, because I worked maintenance for independent schools for 6 years and MU for 3 years, and I went through and read, and some of the things on here were hilarious, like be able to deal with irate customers and stuff. But this is a very wide-reaching job skill set, huge skill set for this person. So I was hoping it was a higher level. Thank you.
Mr. Holman?
I think this is a great idea. I agree. You don't want your workforce to get stagnant as far as professionalism and ability to move up. Is the intent to have some flexibility within this as far as the numbers? In other words, we're going to create the position. We've got a couple people we think are in mind, and then as time goes on, we can use and move 3 or 4 people into these slots.
I'd love it if everybody got maintenance worker 3.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Circo?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Fearborn, because the years I had in building my agency, I would hire and train people, and as they got better qualified, if you didn't keep up with the pay and what you do and give them that higher ceiling, others will steal them, and they would hire them a little bit more for their expertise and what they've earned. So you have a point there, as they get better and they get more experience, they look for something, and they're easier to get snatched if you're not having quality pay in what you do with them. You're right.
Mr. Berenson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, like a lot of positions, maybe similar to our police department, these folks have a very unique qualification in the fact that they can qualify for and hold a CDL. That seems to be something that's harder and harder to find folks that can do that these days. So I think this is a great thing that we're doing. And Mr. Krass, just off the top of your head, how many people would you say that we have currently that could slide into this maintenance worker 3 position, or you think, or in the next year or so? How many do you think people could possibly fit in?
I think there is one currently, and then next year we would next fiscal year probably several others. All right. We're working on getting some of the training set up for the requirements of the worker 3.
I appreciate you bringing this in front of us. I think it's going to be a good career progression and an incentive for folks to stay here. So again, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Barber?
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify, I think this is a great idea too. So potentially, if we pass this to create this position, potentially we could have a budget amendment this year, and then the budget would be changed next year to incorporate this this position.
I actually think that within the current year, the individual who Mr. Krass is talking about, because we have had turnover in Public Works, because good people have left and gone other places, and we've hired some fresher people, I'll put it that way, that aren't being paid quite as much, that we would be able to absorb it in the current year.
So actually not have to do a budget amendment, but actually do
not have to do an expense budget amendment.
Okay. Right. And the only reason for saying that, I'm not opposed for doing that, because I think it's, if we're going to create the position, then and if we've got somebody that could qualify, then we need to put them in that position and not just have the carrot hanging over their head. So whatever would work, I would support.
Anyone else? Okay, next item.
We'll bring that one forward as well. The final item is to, we are going to be in the very near term hiring a new records clerk down in PD administration. And we currently have a half-time administrative assistant in that particular position. The goal moving forward, the council may remember that we had presented to you about a year ago that we have the goal of all of the windows being open into the evening for the convenience of our citizens. This particular budget amendment calls for taking the half-time person, moving them to three-quarter time, which does make them benefits eligible. They're currently an hourly paid employee, and then adjusting the schedules of the record clerk and the administrative assistant to allow for the window downstairs to be open in the evenings as well for the convenience of the people who are coming in there. That will only leave the window right there for us to get that same hurdle overcome with at least one evening for developers or people who are wanting to come in and get a permit to put up a fence and they work all day. But this one would allow for the window downstairs to also be open into the evenings and give us a little bit more consistent transition. As you can see from the write-up, because the position would become benefits eligible, the budget amendment is significantly higher than what we would actually be spending. The individual is currently not using benefits, but to be safe, I would always want to propose the most conservative possible amendment to the council that could go in place. You never know if that individual would leave us and we would have to hire somebody else into the position. So the total budget amendment for this is requested at $32,433 with the distinct possibility that only $9,793 of that would be spent in the current fiscal year. That concludes staff report on this one.
And where would the funding come from? Existing budget?
No, this would actually be a budget amendment to the existing budget. We had that, you'll remember that extra in revenue over expenses, so we would be cutting into that as well.
Okay. Anyone have any question about that? Any heartburn with that? Okay.
We'll bring that one forward next week as well, sir.
All right. Anything else?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just want to remind the council and the public at large that are watching that tomorrow is the first day for filing for candidacy for the city council. It is also our first foray into using the lottery system. So when persons come in, just in case we would have 10 people file for a particular seat, there are numbers 1 through 10 in an envelope. The person files for candidacy, they reach in the envelope and they pull out a number. And then at the end of the filing session, it is 1 through 10. So if you pull number 2 and somebody pulls the number 6, it'll be 2 then 6. If it is, and that way we avoid the locations that use at the end of the filing, we're going to pull the name. You remember we made this presentation to you all for code review, but where there have been accusations that the city clerk, when they pull the name out of a hat to see what the order is going to be, that has been a rigged system. This way the people see the number that they pull. They can see the 10 numbers in there. They see the number, they know what their number is, and at the end of the filing, it's the most neutral way that we could come up with for it. So that'll be in place tomorrow as well. That includes, we have coins for you all tonight.
Oh, all right. Did you have a question, Joe? Yeah, we're still in other.
I just wanted to call the council and mayor's attention to the fact that Crystal Gale had a new album last year. in 2019, so she may be touring, so we can get Mr. Holman to get her over to the amphitheater. It'd be,
Was at the Ameristar a couple years ago.
thank you.
Anyone have anything else? If not,
Now, the next 2 Mondays, holiday time, we're going to be off. Our next Monday, the 23rd, be working on the 23rd.
Yes, we're bringing you into regular session on the
Regular session,
23rd. And then the following Monday is it's the 5th Monday, so there will be no meeting.
All right. Well, all I want to say.
Not because it's the 30th, but because it's the 5th.
Okay, that's fine. Just want to make sure.
and just to remind you, Mrs. Abdelgawada has brought us in her wonderful baklava dessert. So if anybody would wish to partake in her holiday special there, it is very good. So thank you for bringing that in. If there's
I'm
nothing
taking
else,
mine
we'll
and
stand
leaving.
adjourned.
I love this stuff and I hate this stuff. I always tell myself I'm going to have one a night. That